the co-founder of Hotwire. In this video, I take you through my personal journey during the past 4 years. You know, initially I was a little bit nervous about doing this. I was a little afraid. I don't know if I wanted to do this, but ultimately I decided that I've been through so many ups and downs, and I feel like there's so much learning that you can learn what to do and what not to do from my last 4 years of experience. So if you're watching this right now, you're probably a friend of mine or a colleague or a family member. If you don't know me, my name is Ash. I'm a digital creator, designer, and storyteller. Now, I never thought I would be a digital creator, to be honest. That's the last thing I thought. In fact, I studied chemical engineering in college. So during my senior year of college at the University of Washington, I was studying chemical engineering at the time. I was part of this capstone project with a friend of mine and a group of people. And we decided to turn this capstone project, it was a crazy idea to turn this capstone project into an actual startup, like a business. Our idea was that we could automate wildfire fighting by having a team of drones, a swarm of drones, put out medium-sized fires before they get too big. And these drones ideally would have kind of like guns that would shoot out like low-density chemicals to put out the fire effectively. It was a crazy idea, for sure. But we were all so optimistic and so excited about it and just so naive. We were like, let's just go out and do it and see what we can do. I went out to recruit an MBA student by the name of Taylor Banks. Taylor and I are still friends to this day, by the way. He's the CFO at Sistema Technologies, an aerospace and defense contractor out in Kirkland. The fact that he was a well-seasoned professional in the aerospace industry and finance, like that combination, and he had so much belief in us, like he decided to join our mission, that was so encouraging. We were like, well, we're getting people to believe in us. And then we also raised more than $10,000 from the University of Washington to develop our prototype, to buy things to develop our prototype, to go out and actually use those funds to travel to meet potential customers, potential buyers, government agencies. The part I remember most vividly is that it was so difficult to just meet with decision makers in government agencies. Like we were going out to the California fire chief and saying, hey, meet with us for an hour. We have this, we're college students and we might be kind of crazy, but we have this idea that might be able to help you. And that was difficult. Like nobody really wanted to spend, nobody really took us seriously, and for good reason too. They probably have a lot of things going on. And so I personally went out to all these capital cities of these states in the Northwest. I went out to Sacramento, California, Salem, Oregon, Boise, Idaho. I went out to Missoula, Montana. Honestly, at one point, I thought this was the jackpot. I couldn't have been more wrong. Within just a few weeks, everything fell apart. There were 3 main problems. One, the founding team was way too big. I heard people tell me, starting a business with a partner or with 2 partners is so complicated and there's so many dynamics. Imagine starting a business with a founding team of 11 people. I mean, that's insane. The second problem was the technical challenge. I mean, we were so naive. We believed that in just a few weeks, maybe a couple months, we could develop this sort of a swarm of drones and automate them to have be equipped with like a gun that shoots out chemicals, that just puts out fires. I mean, there's so many technical factors and challenges involved with that, and so we were naive to that. And that was the second challenge. And the third challenge was we were dealing with government buyers. At the end of the day, you have to have some kind of insider relationship, and if you're not on the inside, I learned the hard way, you're on the outside. And also with business to government type of businesses, where you're selling to government, things tend to move at glacial speeds. I mean, things tend to move really slow. So there's just all those 3 factors that we didn't take into account before we started led to the sort of crumbling of this project. So I had gone from like being super high and like, oh my God, this is crazy, to, well, I felt like a failure. I felt like, wow, I felt really down. I wasn't sure, I felt super insecure, like I was never going to succeed at anything.
Now this cost is driven by a time delay
between when the fire gets detected and when suppression forces are deployed to put out the fire. By automating the first response, we both minimize the environmental impact of wildfires and save lives. We have met with potential customers and have validated the market opportunity for our service. So after college, I went to work for an HVAC automation company. Now, HVAC stands for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. So the industry, HVAC automation, is how do you automate heating, ventilation, and air conditioning in a commercial building, essentially to conserve energy, to save energy. And I could talk about this topic for a long time because buildings take up 40% of the world's energy. Maybe I'll save that for another video. So I went to go work in sales, and the reason I went to go work in sales is, one, sales skills. I realized that sales skills are so important in any business, any industry. Sales is very, very important. The second reason why is because I really enjoyed and was so curious about I call it the woo challenge, the winning others over challenge. How do you win somebody over? How do you influence somebody? How do you get somebody to meet with you? How do you break the ice? That challenge to me was so intriguing and intellectually stimulating, and I was like, I want to go do that. I want to go tackle that challenge. And the third reason, is to be blunt, is the reason I got into chemical engineering was I said, okay, well, I'm going to go into the oil industry. They make a lot of money as engineers in the oil industry, so I'm going to go do that. I'm going to go make a lot of money as a chemical engineer in the oil industry. Well, I was just never a good fit for those jobs. I never got an internship with any of those oil companies. I interviewed, but I never got the position. And looking back, I mean, this is a learning lesson too here. Looking back, I was kind of disappointed that I didn't get those internships and that I didn't get those jobs and those positions. But I think it was for good reason. They saw in me that maybe I wasn't a good fit to be an engineer. Maybe I was meant for something else. And the lesson here is that sometimes things won't go your way and you won't be able to see the blessing in disguise from it until later on. You know, if something doesn't go your way, later you'll be like, oh wow, I'm so glad that didn't go my way, because if it had gone that way, I wouldn't be where I am today. Now, my first task was very intimidating. So I was an outside sales rep. My task was to land a few large clients that we hadn't done business with yet. How do we land meetings with these clients? How do we actually start winning some business from these clients that we hadn't really done business with before? And my manager and I got along really well. He was really encouraging, but I struggled. I really struggled. And I feared, I remember fearing going into the office. I remember fearing just like the embarrassment of like, oh man, I didn't hit my numbers, or oh man, I've been trying, but I didn't make necessarily like the progress that, I was hoping for. So at a certain point, a few months in, I started feeling a loss of hope and like intense pressure, right? Like I didn't want to get fired, obviously, and I didn't want to get embarrassed in front of I just graduated from college and 3 months later I get fired, like what? So I went to the bookstore. It was actually Barnes & Noble in Northgate, and I was just browsing through books. I was like, man, what can I find? I was looking for information to kind of help me with my journey, whether it's sales skills or whatever. I was looking for information. I was looking to learn. And I found this book. I came across this book called How to Get a Meeting with Anyone by Stu Heineck. And I loved the book so much that I remember staying up all night. I bought the book. I stayed up all night reading the book. And I became so fascinated with it. And then I found out that the author lived in Whidbey Island. I live in Seattle. He lives in Whidbey Island. I remember reaching out to him. First time didn't work. Second time didn't work. I reached out to him on LinkedIn. And then finally I made a video describing to him how much I loved the book and that, he should meet with me, and, I'm excited to meet him and all that. And Stu, if you're watching this, I love you, Stu. Thank you so much for dedicating part of your life to this book. So I went out to Whidbey Island. I met with him, and actually I was so excited that I took 2 phone stands with me, and I recorded our conversation and put it up on YouTube. It's still somewhere out there. The quality is horrible, but it's somewhere out there that you can kind of see my excitement and my enthusiasm in the video of me kind of talking during our conversation. Hey everyone, I'm with Stu Heineck here, and so he's the author of this book, How to Get a Meeting with Anyone. It's one of my favorite books I've ever read, and we're going to learn.
It's one of my favorite books I've ever written too.
And well, this is actually 2 cameras. Tell us a little bit about your personal background, your early childhood growing up.
You might come back up to to Whitby just to enjoy your time here. These interviews are great devices for meeting people.
He kind of became like a mentor to me, and I kind of started using his strategies and his tactics to land meetings with people in our industry, potential customers. And that started winning me brownie points in the office. I remember, people kind of getting a little bit excited that I had been making some progress. Now, one of the meetings that I landed was with the CEO of McDonald Miller, Gus Simons. They are one of the largest mechanical contractors here in the Pacific Northwest. I remember sending him a model car of his favorite car. It was a 1971 Oldsmobile Cutlass, I remember. And the way I knew it was his model car is because I just did a Google search online and I saw that was his favorite car. And I said, okay, well, if I send him a model car and a well thought out letter, maybe he'll accept to meet with me. And he got back. He said, yeah, I'll meet with you. We'll have lunch. So we went and had lunch. All right, guys, so we're sending Gus Simons, the CEO of Mac Miller, a model car. This is a 1971 Oldsmobile Classic. This is what he drove throughout high school and college. Hopefully it will get us a meeting. I really cannot believe this. What a great feeling to be able to apply knowledge that you learned, think outside of the box, be bold, be creative. Wow. I don't know. I feel so great. Now, initially I was trying to convince him to kind of partner with our firm that I had been working at. Say, hey, you should hire us. I know you guys have a lot of work going on. We want to help with the work. We can, do this, X, Y, and Z. Now, even though I landed the meeting and I felt like the meeting went really well, we did not end up winning any business from them. But 7 to 9 months later, McDonald Miller was looking to enter a new market in one of their business divisions, and they needed somebody to kind of develop their pipeline to start developing their business in that specific market. And I had known somebody else in that office by the name of George, so I was invited to interview for that position and eventually accepted a position to join their firm just 7 to 9 months after that initial meeting. I was now entering a new chapter of my life. So it's August of 2018 and I'm getting settled into my new office. This is the same industry, by the way. I was still in the HVAC automation industry, just a bigger company with a bigger budget, and I was in a bigger role, a more important role, so I was taking on bigger tasks, a bigger challenge ahead of me. Hey guys, we're building an air handling unit.
Are we YouTube famous yet?
We're building an air handling unit.
When we get on Rachel Ray, we will talk.
I was paid very well and I performed very well from the beginning. I remember one of the months, this is maybe a year into my role, I received the Top Sales Dog Award, and that was very exciting for me. I was very involved in the community. I even joined several nonprofit boards, nonprofit organizations like ASHRAE and IFMA. I became a member of their board of directors on the board of governors.
2, 3.
This past year, we've had more sponsors than we've had in the past 5 years. So if you've contributed to ASHRAE, thank you so much. I want to give just another big round of applause for all the sponsors. Thank you so much for sponsoring. Everything was going really well, and my colleagues were really pleased with my work and my progress. As I began gaining more experience with business development, I sort of discovered the importance of storytelling. I started realizing my passion for storytelling and its impact on human connection, its impact on education, its impact on inspiration, and its impact on relationships. I could talk for hours about the importance of storytelling, but I'm going to save that for another video. So I started to formulate the concept of what would become ExecuTalks. To be honest, when I was formulating the concept, I didn't really have a clear end goal, but I knew deep down inside of me that I had this passion for how storytelling has an impact on human beings and human relationships and human connection. I also had this continuous voice in my head that kept asking me, What would you have done differently if you could go back in your career? What would you have done differently if you could go back in your life? I kept having that voice inside of me.
If I could go back in time, I would do these things.
And so maybe that was it. Maybe I could bring young people, new professionals, I could bring them visitors of their future. Now, the tagline for ExecuTalks would eventually become the inspiring career stories of today's top CEOs, executives, and leaders. The first challenge in getting started was, how was I going to get people running multi-million and multi-billion-dollar companies to sit down with me to spend an hour of their time with me? I was a 25-year-old kid with no credibility, no really past record of doing interviews, doing these kinds of things. I was just starting off. The odds were not in my favor. Most people that I was reaching out to, an hour of their time is very valuable. It's tens of thousands of dollars, more than I could afford. So I knew that I had to be very creative in making a connection in my ask and my messaging. It was a challenge that I had overcome before, obviously, in my previous work. But this was a different beast. I mean, reaching out to a Fortune 500 CEO and telling them, come spend an hour with me to be on my podcast show that's, not NPR or not some big news station is daunting. The other challenge was I had no idea about podcasting or digital creation or any of this stuff. So I didn't act on this idea right away. I kind of let that idea marinate for a little bit. And I slowly realized that it was all I could think about before I go to sleep. It would honestly keep me up at night. I would have a 7 a.m., 8 a.m. morning, and I'd be sitting in my bed it's like 4 or 5 a.m. I'm like, oh my God, why haven't I gone to sleep yet? Because I'm thinking about this thing, this idea, this is so exciting to me. Why won't it just go away? But then again, I truly enjoyed my work at McDonald Miller and believed in the greater mission of McDonald Miller. I loved it. And it wasn't because I loved construction, and it was because contributing to a cause like making the world more energy efficient and conserving our planet, that was something that was meaningful to me. So I had a choice to make. Was I really going to leave a job that I enjoyed, that I got paid well for, and take a huge leap of faith for something that might not even end up working? Or was I going to let this idea keep me from sleeping and just procrastinate? Because this idea was not going to go away. It was a tough decision, but ultimately I asked myself, which decision would lead me to regret later less? So it's kind of like scenario building, right? In finance or investment banking, there's this thing called scenario building where if this, then this, if this, then this. So here's like the different scenarios. So for me was scenario one, if I did this, then what would I regret? If I did this, what would I regret? I wouldn't have been able to live with myself if I had just let this idea keep bugging me and keep me from sleeping at night and procrastinating. I wouldn't be able to live with myself. Ultimately, I decided to take that leap of faith and pursue this passion project. The co-founder of Hotwire, which later sold to Expedia in 2003.
Thank you. Very excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
You had a good time, and sorry for going a little bit.
I did, Ash. Thanks. Let me just offer something about building a brand online.
One advice that you would give to 15-year-old Glenn.
Just don't settle.
If you're interested in evil.
I'm not interested in evil, but yes, seriously. Help you become successful.
I literally reached out to somebody who I haven't talked to in 10 years yesterday, and that person got back to me right away.
Yeah. I think the best advice I've ever gotten was listen more. Actually, literally, I think it was shut up and listen more.
Look at that hair. Look at that quarantine hair. You're successful because of those things and all the other things you're not even counting. Claim it all.
It's so much better than like a leadership book, and just actually seeing the human side of people is sometimes encouraging, right?
Is this a time to maybe rethink local commerce as we know it? I didn't want to be a deadbeat dad, basically. I had a wife that was working. I had a daughter on the way.
I grew up pretty poor. My dad was a failed entrepreneur. Ash, he had...
Look at us. Look at us. We're just totally making him proud.
and I said...
I was laughing, Ash, because some things, and I'd listened to a couple of your things and all that. So you do a great job, by the way.
It just gets more interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grow up. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I just did.
The most asked question I get by far is, how do you get Fortune 500 CEOs, executives running big businesses, government leaders? How do you get these people to meet with you, to spend time with you? My answer is simple. I have 3 tips. 1, have a purpose. Why are you reaching out? That has to be clear. Number 2, the communication has to be concise. They don't have time to read an essay. It has to be 1, 2, 3 sentences max. And number 3, make it personal and creative. I've talked about this in detail before, and I may end up doing another long video about it soon. When I first started, 5 people listened to the podcast and they were all related to me. More than 50 executives that I had reached out to didn't give me the time of day. The one I remember most vividly is trying to land a meeting with the Dairygold CEO, and I've talked about this in detail and I'll talk about it in another video soon, but that was crazy. Also, the people around me, including some family members, thought I was a psychopath for leaving a job with a great income to pursue something that has a high chance of failing. Like, they thought I was crazy. The hardest thing to deal with by far to this day is the emotional struggle. It's nothing technical. It's not how do you do this or how do you do that. Or the hardest thing is the emotional challenge. Questions like, am I doing the right things? Maybe I'm not meant for this. Maybe I should just quit. I'm embarrassing myself. I remember just a few months ago, I decided to write an ebook because I engaged with people on social media and I asked, hey, what are some things you're struggling with? And at the time, a lot of people were struggling with, landing their dream jobs. How do you get, maybe if you could help me land meetings with potential managers so I can kind of sell myself. How do you land a dream job? What's your advice? So I started hearing those questions a lot, and I decided to write an ebook about it. It took me several months to write this ebook. I spent $200 designing the ebook, and when I finally announced it, a total of 5 people bought the ebook, and 2 of them were my friends. So that was a little disheartening. I felt a little down about that. How are things going today? Even though I'm making incremental progress, every week there's a high point and a low point. For example, just a few days ago, I heard back from the former Starbucks president. He's going to appear on our podcast. That's huge. That was a high for me. Like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. And there's a low point. Why aren't we getting millions of downloads yet? Why did this person call off the interview this week? Are we doing the right things? Like, on a weekly basis, these intense highs and intense lows happen. I want to share with you a learning lesson that really shocked me, my biggest learning lesson of all. At one point, this was the summer of 2020, I decided I would recruit people to join me on the mission of ExecuTalks. They would all volunteer part-time, about 10 hours of their week, and in return, it would provide them with a great experience, and I would be a referral for them for future job applications. As long as they did good work, of course. Bloggers, videographers, marketing folks, PR folks, even a podcast transcriber joined our team. I honestly thought the challenge would be not having money. The challenge would be, how are these people going to work if they're not being paid? I was dead wrong, and I'm pretty sure you're shocked listening to this right now. I believe that today, more than ever, people are driven more by purpose than by money. And that was the big eye-opener for me, which makes storytelling all the more important. At one point, ExecuTalks was a 30-person team, all volunteers, believing in and contributing to this mission. I found myself spending hours and hours just meeting with people one-on-one and team meetings and group meetings. And all these meetings took away from my time to create, took away from my time to do my actual job. And I realized just how counterproductive it was. And people started to quickly realize that this was a problem. Our team began crumbling slowly but surely. Today, it's just me, our podcast producer, Alexi, and a part-time video editor by the name of Daniel. Even though we've had solid listenership that continues to grow slowly but surely, and we've had success in convincing these Fortune 500 executives and CEOs to appear on our show, companies like Zillow, Redfin, Fortive, SeaWorld, we're nowhere near where we want to be. I started this project in January of 2020, so it hasn't even been 2 years yet. Just imagine where we'll be 5 years from now. I honestly wasn't really sure how I was going to end this part because I'm currently living it. I've decided I'm going to start making long-form videos on hot topics and recent events. So you'll be seeing more videos in the future if you subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully I'll see you again soon.